Welcome, everybody, to our Under the Dome session with Chairman Charles Schwertner today. He is actually joining us in between committee. So we've got him for about maybe 15, 20 minutes. So we are going to skip all the fancy intro stuff because we just want to get down to the good stuff. So I'm going to say real quick, just introduce Chairman Charles Schwertner. He's from Senate District 5, which is about a 10-county region from East and Central Texas area. He is currently chairman of administration. He also serves on business and commerce, education, finance, and state affairs. Most importantly, he's got some great transportation bills that he's been working on. So I'm going to let him take it over and use our time wisely.
Thank you, Andrea. Not sure how many people I'm talking to, but it's good to talk to you about a certain issue that's been very important to, I think, address for the state of Texas. Right now, we're in the middle of the session. This is an issue regarding alternatively fueled vehicles that goes back to last session. I filed a bill then, as did Kirk Watson and Senator Powell, regarding the need for an equalization amount that is collected by individuals that own and operate a electric vehicle, alternatively fueled vehicle, to where we can continue with infrastructure development, in this case, road maintenance and road construction, new road construction. So it's matured. There was a study that was done during the interim. It's been an issue that other states have addressed, but I think it's time for Texas to address this issue. As y'all are all probably aware, the number of alternatively fueled vehicles is increasing relatively dramatically. And the gas tax is because of fuel conservation and miles per gallon increasing. It's become a more important that we collect some sort of an amount that is a fair amount that is proportional to what is currently being paid in the gas tax by vehicles that are powered by gasoline. So to that end, I've worked with Chairman Nichols. I've talked to House members Ken King and so there'll be work on both sides of the chamber to try to find a solution that is amenable to both chambers. The idea, at least on the Senate side, that working with Chairman Nichols, is looking at the weight of the vehicle, the amount of miles per gallon, and coming up with a proportional amount that would be paid at the time of vehicle registration that would collect proportional to for that weight in miles that class of vehicle is currently paying in a gas tax on average, and collecting that at the time of a vehicle registration on a yearly basis, so that they are fairly chipping in on the long-term needs of Texas. So that everyone should pull their own, pull some weight, and in this case, it would be done at the time of vehicle registration with an assessment of a equalization amount, a fee that needs to be collected. So that's where we're at. I think it has a lot of support, both on the left and the right. I've had members, not just Chairman Nichols, but Senator Powell, Senator West on the Democrat side. But I've talked about it in front of the caucus, the Republican caucus, as a priority of mine, priority of Texas, really, because without it, we're going to see a continued and probably increasing decline of revenue from the gas tax to Fund 6. So that's where we're at with that bill. We are, as y'all probably are well aware, we're in the middle of a kind of a crisis here with electric generation and the failure of the power grid to meet the demands of citizens across our state. And so that's really overtaken and consumed this week, and we have another B&C hearing tomorrow. I sat through 2 B&C hearings, 25 hours of testimony, and it was just a complete failure from supply of natural gas freezing up along the pipelines and at compressor stations, and then utilities being offline at a critical time, not getting enough gas, and utilities, their infrastructure also kind of freezing up. And then distributions with power lines having a significant ice formation on them and going out to some extent. And so actually 48% of generation was offline at one time, and there were certain, because we have a competitive market here in Texas, the demand response of lowering of consumption across Texas didn't occur because the entire state, like a Category 5 hurricane, hitting the entire state. But in this case, it was a Category 5 ice storm that was never really contemplated. It hasn't occurred since the 1800s, this magnitude of ice and snow for the prolonged period of time. So it put a spotlight on a bunch of glaring deficiencies in the grid, in the way we regulate, oversee, and prepare for storms. And we need to have dramatic change in our regulatory structure and oversight structure, preparedness, alert system. So, people have known that this is, basically a Category 5 storm that was going to come across Texas. They might have been a little bit more prepared if we had been able to forewarn them, but really we didn't. The industry wasn't ready. They weren't ready, and they don't talk to one another to the extent that they should. Our regulatory agencies, the Railroad Commission, the PUC, ERCOT, don't talk to one another as well as they should. So there's been a lot of work this last week, and so that is actually the focus. And so other committees, such as the Transportation Committee, that this alternative fuel vehicles bill, the equalization amount, is going through, that we haven't even begun deliberations regarding other pieces of legislation. But I know it is a high importance to get it done this session. It becomes a harder endeavor as you have more and more vehicles that are EV vehicles on the road. They become a more vocal opposition to anything that is, basically a new amount of money they're going to have to pay. So, and I understand that, but in this case, the broader issue is a fairness issue and an amount that will maintain the infrastructure, roads, and other vital transportation infrastructures that are funded by Fund 6 in Texas. So I think people realize that. I think my colleagues on the right are willing to kind of bite the bullet. We've had issues in the past with gas tax changes, and it's been an uphill battle trying to find ways to fund Fund 6. We've done so over the years with motor vehicle sales tax changes, and also changes that occurred with the excise tax, with oil and gas severance tax going somewhat to Fund 6. So with that, I'll open it up and answer questions about this piece of legislation. Anything else going on in the legislature you want to know about? Other ideas? So
yeah, great. So just want to, so thank you for that. And thank you for walking us through how much work it's been this week and how much really the energy, those conversations have just really taken, front seat. And we're absolutely mindful of that. And I think it helps us understand that even more so that bills have to be prioritized, and that not everything's going to get it,
And this is obviously because of COVID. We started slow. This is a compressed session. It is going to be a boiler here in April and May with the number of bills, people trying to do a whole session's worth of work within 30, 40 days. And it's going to be tough. It's going to be tough. But I think this bill has a good shot because of the interest with certain individuals on both sides, both chambers, both corner offices, and the need to get it done. I think there's a consensus now built around something that needs to be done regarding alternative fuel vehicles and paying their fair share.
Right. Well, we're really pleased to hear that. And we really look forward to staying kind of close to those conversations. I know there's some variance, but we know that it's priority. So y'all are going to work together to come up with, an agreement on that. I want to go back to talking about kind of the prioritizing of bills. We know Chairman Nichols he's always been that way, right? He's very careful about what he selects to come through the committee. One of the other top bills that we've seen in both chambers related to transportation is the Texas Mobility Fund, and allowing the access to that, right? So bringing that bonding ability back for TxDOT and to access those funds. So that seems like another one that when you see them in both chambers like that, like you said, corner office, you're like, okay, right, that looks pretty.
It has legs is the term we use around here.
The other, then there's the other bills that are, you can see kind of pieces of things, and man, that could really slide through. I'm not really sure. And so there's two different versions that I'm thinking of. One is, I see that you introduced a bill for an optional county fee for registration. So, but it's really for certain counties. It's bracketed for certain counties.
The RMA bill.
Right. And so I see there's been a few of those kind of personalized to different specific counties.
Right.
And we had looked at a bill that was being filed in the House, or potentially being filed in the House, that dealt with exempting transit agencies for the sales tax, from the sales tax cap, right? So can't go in and lift up the sales tax cap completely. That's probably not politically viable right now. But can we start to exempt certain things from the cap that allow for better connectivity? And so there's been back and forth about it. I think what we've been told too is when you start to bracket for specific counties, that is much more helpful for some of these conversations. And I see that that's kind of what's been done for some of these local option bills that are coming through. So from your vantage point, do you feel that kind of Chairman Nichols and kind of the Senate side of the conversation, that's a much more viable option, is to bring forward something that has a more local option feel to it versus a statewide kind of mandate?
Are you, if you're referring specifically to the RMA type situation, I think the local option is probably the best way to handle it. With the demonstration that you have, the support of the governance of that local, whether it's county or the cities within those counties and other interested parties. It's it's an additional source of taxation or fees on the people that reside there. In my case, I want to make sure that they are okay with it. So I have a voter ratification component to it. I'm not the first to do it. In fact, it's been primarily done in areas of Texas that are more Democrat versus Republican. So it's a little bit of a harder sell in Republican districts or communities. But this one for the Brazos County was brought by the people of Brazos County, supported by both College Station and Bryan, with resolutions in the county as well. And something that is, because it's A&M and growing area, that it was supported by A&M as well. So it was something that was unanimous in the local desire, and so therefore I'm carrying it and pushing it. It's been hard to get it done on this side. Last session, those type of bills, fee bills, were looked down upon by the corner office to some extent, and so that there were a number of different versions of them. I think there were 5 or 6 last session, and the way it was handled, if you let one go, you got to let all of them go. So you just kind of squashed them all. So just being square with you.
No, that's helpful. No, that's helpful. The other piece of legislation that deals with transportation is more of the safety aspect, right?
Mhm.
So we've seen a version in the House that is a state mandated lowering of speed limits in residential kind of urban street areas.
Right.
And then Senator Zaffarini in the Senate has one that is, it focuses on the 4 major urban cores, but then it allows localities to opt into it. And that's one that I know the city of Houston and a lot of other localities are really focused on, because it's a safety issue.
Mhm.
And we know that that's been a tremendous lift for TxDOT to really take on fatalities on their roads. So I'm just curious if you have a sense for how the safety conversation ties into transportation this session, and what you think is viable.
Well, I've visited Texas Transportation Institute, saw the improvements in just infrastructure, and obviously vehicles have dramatically improved as well. Speed and the desire to speed to get to point A to point B, the frustrations associated with driving in urban areas, just the congestion in urban areas, those do lead to increased accidents. I'm not necessarily against looking at that issue. People have to get somewhere, and there's always a risk. I'm a surgeon, and I tell my patients that, well, we're going to do surgery. You have a 2% overall complication rate for total knee replacement, but you might actually have a higher rate of having some sort of issue if you were in your car driving down I-35 into Austin every day, and kind of puts it in perspective. People have to live, so there's a livelihood and convenience, and just kind of common sense aspect of how much you change the speeding limit. That to be quite frank, I'd have to be sold on changing it.
Okay, no,
That's where I'm at with it right now.
That's good to know, and I know that that's what they're working on. So you will see, you will see more on that. I had a question from Barry Goodman with the Goodman Corporation, asking about the electric vehicle legislation.
Mhm.
You mentioned it's tied to weight and miles, right? So that, so if somebody purchases an electric vehicle and it sits in their garage all year or
Right.
most of the year,
They
it
still
doesn't count.
pay the equalization amount.
Okay, and
It's like
so,
a vehicle registration fee. It's
okay,
not
so,
tied to vehicle miles traveled. I did author that last session. And
okay,
I guess to be quite frank, it's probably the fairest way to assess it.
right,
If
yeah,
you do that though with EV vehicles and you don't go retroactively and do it with gas vehicles, so you're proportionalizing them whenever it happens or when you start it, but longer term, the VMT methodology is a little bit harder to administer, and then you would have two different classes of vehicles paying into the road maintenance fund 6, but with a different, again, methodology. So the case is good why VMTs would be a better way of handling it. I think truckers have, for instance, their mileage recorded, so it wouldn't be that difficult, and people, you have odometers as well. But from a practicality standpoint, an assessment and amount of fee is the easiest and kind of has the most consensus around here.
okay. I do want to, if time for maybe 2 more questions.
Yeah. Yeah. Then I gotta get
So-
back. I'm sorry. I'm in the middle of
No,
finance.
you're fine. You're fine. I can tell. I feel like you're like watching to make sure like
I
everybody's
appreciate the
using
time
all
to talk to y'all, but I have to.
So you're
get to
good.
work.
So with regards to the electric vehicle legislation, I really do feel like this one out of a lot of them has the teeth and the legs, like you said. So Chairman Canalis's version does a lot money to pay for some of the grid that's needed for the electric vehicle kind of industry or increases that are going to be coming, right? So your thoughts on that, right, and that version, and kind of how that would kind of tie in with the version that you've worked on with Chairman Nichols.
Right. It's not in this piece of legislation regarding any assessment or special fund set up by this. This would all go to Fund 6. As y'all know, the gas tax, a quarter of it goes to education. That was discussed. It would take a constitutional amendment, which means you got to get 100 votes in the House and you got to get 66% supermajority on the Senate side. That becomes a more difficult issue, obviously. And so the way I wrote the legislation is that all the money would go to Fund 6. There's obviously a need for charging stations and infrastructure development to supply and help alternative fuel vehicle, natural gas compression, all of that type of stuff. But that's not in this piece of legislation.
Okay. And
so
then
that is a difference in the House and the Senate at the current time.
okay. Right. The other thing I wanted to ask about was tolling, right? Hot issue all the time. Some people, everybody's kind of different on the spectrum. So where do you land on that topic as far as tolling?
I think tolls make sense in toll roads and fast growing suburban and some urban areas. I don't like tolling freeways or changing them for freeways I don't like tolls in rural areas. The toll for the Aggie highway from Houston to A&M, I kind of fought that. It's a freeway now, 249, I believe, right? And so that's where I'm at. We under Governor Perry, transportation was kind of starved a little bit and so tolls were seen as a way to develop the infrastructure for a fast growing state. We've changed our thoughts on funding transportation to a great extent, with multiple sessions being fairly good at transportation regarding overall funding. And as such, I think it's more incumbent upon the state to take a more proactive role of making sure that we have as many freeways as possible, so that people can get from point A to point B and the long-term transportation needs are met. So I'm not necessarily opposed to tolls. It's just there's obviously a constituency that says I'm already paying tax and fees and excise taxes with oil and gas, that it becomes a harder sell when you've done so much work in the legislature to try to enhance transportation funding.
Right.
Not recognize those concerns and the fact that, hey, we're already paying, why do I have to pay twice, right?
Right. I know Senator Kolkhorst has a bill in for the cessation of tolling, right? So I think you're saying kind of we keep it in the toolbox, but it is monitored and used where it makes the most sense.
Right.
So you think
right.
that's good. And
Yeah,
I think
suburban areas, fast growing suburban areas are where they've historically seen, in my opinion, the best. They all obviously are built fast. I think they probably are maybe built cheaper. And so, I think that all is good. It's just the conversion of freeways to tollways, and tolling in rural areas. I don't really subscribe to those two areas in particular.
Okay. We mentioned the gas tax and some of the issues with it, and we know that it's not a perfect solution, right, for funding transportation because of the technology and
Fuel efficiency,
fuel efficiency, and so there's the ever-present conversation that it's never been indexed or increased since the 90s.
Right.
Increase, again, the being politically viable.
It's been tried, Tommy Williams tried to do it on the House floor or Senate floor, but I've seen it fail on the House floor. I've seen it fail on the Senate floor in my 12 years here.
Right now, but the indexing, is that also, do you feel kind of dead on arrival?
Yeah, I do. Unfortunately, I had indexing initially in the bill. I was trying to make this as encompassing as possible.
Mm-hmm.
You only get so many bites of the apple. I was going to make it encompass all EV and alternative fueled vehicles, natural gas or hybrids as well. And also include an index so we don't have to deal with this. But then people were saying, well, we're not indexing. Why are we now penalizing alternative fuels regarding indexing where we're not indexing the gas tax? Okay. And so you can't jump ahead. I'm trying to catch up at least. And that was a jump ahead, and it became, so you want to do a fee and an index. And eventually I try to have to get reelected. So.
Okay. Yeah.
On that note, I got to get going.
Okay.
It's a very hard sell, indexing.
Right.
Raising it's a hard sell, and indexing it after raising it is even a harder sell. So.
Okay. Well, we appreciate your time today. We've gotten a very good.
Candid with you.
Yes. No, we've got a very good snapshot on kind of the Senate side and what's happening with transportation. So really appreciate your time, and I look forward to staying in touch with your staff on follow up on your bills. So
I'm sorry I couldn't spend more time with y'all, but I appreciate being able to talk to you.
Thank you so much for your time.
Have a good day. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye. So just a reminder to everybody, thank you for your patience with the schedules and the flexing. We do have Representative Celia Israel on Friday, this Friday, March 5th at, I think it's 9 a.m. So please come back and join us for that. And we've got Representative Lena Ortega, who's on House Transportation next Friday. And we've got a few others that we're booking in the process of booking. And today we announced our judges event, which is going to be Friday, March 26th at noon. Please look for that invite. If you don't have it, please email me and I can get it to you. But that is with our 5 county judges. And so that should be a great conversation. So thank you, everybody, for joining us today, and we will see you Friday.
Hey, Andrea, didn't we just meet with the Representative Celia? Didn't we just meet with her?
So we did before session, well before session, but we haven't met with her during session, and she's got some legislation that's actually been filed, right? And so we can actually now talk to her about some of the legislation. So, but yes, we did. We met with her prior to session, probably October.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, first of all, to TAG for all that you're doing, and thank you for thinking about those families who need.
I hope to see y'all soon. I appreciate your work, your advocacy, not just during the session, but post-session.
You're innovators, visionaries, and I really appreciate that.
Appreciate the friendships that I've had with the transportation community.
Thank y'all for putting these on. It's just a really great idea, and thank you to everyone that's watching.
Definitely thank you to TAG for keeping us connected, continuing to keep us connected even in these unprecedented times.
We're all in this together. We will come out of this together. We will definitely be stronger together.